Hello, parents. I am Dr. Sonia S. Kanitkar, and I'm going to talk about adolescent sexuality today and how it is affected by various factors. So, let me share my uh, presentation here. So, here we are. So, you already know most of the parents have already heard me on my YouTube channel. Today, I have been invited by Med Talks, and I am glad that I am presenting to more and more parents now regarding adolescents. Now, today, the topic that I have selected is what can affect sexuality in a teen, what factors. So I have already made one very short video, that is 5 minutes video, which some of my parents have already seen, but they said that they have not been able to understand some points. So today I am going to elaborate on each and every point, because this is a very important topic that any parent of a child or an adolescent needs to know today, when we have become and we are becoming an open society. So let's go forward. Now, I want to tell all my parents that you can reach me on my email address, son2017sss@gmail.com, for any questions, and I will be answering your questions. You can just write your doubts, what you want me to do further, any topic you want me to cover, and I will do that. So let me start with the most important thing. First and foremost, I would like all my parents to understand the difference between sex, gender, and sexuality. There is a lot of confusion among parents. How is the sex determined? How is the gender formed? And how the sexuality, what is sexuality? What are the factors? How they can know whether their boy or a girl is going to be homosexual, heterosexual, or otherwise. So all these points, we first need to understand how is sex of a child determined. As you know, at birth, sex of a child is determined by the external appearance of the genital organs, or it can also be confirmed by chromosomal testing. And so we label the child as male or female or other. And then comes the gender. So parents don't know that there is a difference between sex and gender. Now, gender is, as the WHO defines, it is perceived as a social construct that people typically describe in femininity and masculinity. So this is a society determined term, and gender develops over a period of time. Of course, as the child develops, at birth we determine the sex, and then as the child grows around the age of 2 years, the children, they become conscious that there is a difference between the other boy and myself. And then by the age of 3 years, most children are easily able to identify themselves as a boy or a girl. And by the age of 4, most children, they can say, मैं खाती हूँ, मैं खाता हूँ. They know the difference, how to act according to their gender. So this is where we are going to understand the difference between sex, gender. That is very clear. I hope, my parents, if you have any doubt, you can still write to me on my email address. Then let's come to the third term, that is sexuality. Yeah. So what does sexuality mean for all of us? It means sexual orientation, which is with whom a person is attracted to, either sexually or romantically or both. That is the word sexuality. So adult sexuality takes the form, but it is not fixed at childhood. It is developing continuously, starting from the gender. Once the child achieves the gender identification, then starts the formation of sexuality from there on, and then sexuality keeps maturing and it develops mostly at the time of adolescence, that is the age between 9 years to 19 years. So that is the very important phase where sexuality is affected of any individual. Now, I want to give a very important eye opener for all parents and public. There is a lot of awareness about homosexualism, heterosexuality, and other types of sexualities. So, I want to tell the parents today that there is a research that has not been able to point to any one cause. There is no one cause which determines homosexuality. It is now believed that it is caused because of a complicated derivative from genetics, hormonal and environmental factors, and many other factors which I am going to discuss later. So be on alert. Homosexuality was dropped as a mental disorder. Earlier, there was a lot of misconception that it's a mental disorder, but dear parents, please take it from me. It is a research thing, that it is no more a mental disorder or a disease or a sexual perversion. It has been taken away from the books of Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders in 1973. And WHO does not recognize homosexuality as a disease or a mental disorder. This is a very important fact which has to be, known to all parents and also to any or in. So, what do I say? Sexual orientation is not a matter of choice. This is a clear message of medical science. It's a message from medical science, not my individual opinion. So now it becomes very important for us to understand how sexuality goes on to develop. We have talked about how sex is determined, how gender is fixed, and now we are going on to sexuality development. Puberty, as you all know, by around 9 or 10 years of age, we understand that there are a lot of characteristics developing in a teenager or an adolescent, which is called puberty. It is an important landmark of sexuality development that occurs in adolescence. That is between 14 to 17 years. Noted, that is the middle adolescence. It is teens are the most impressionable in this aspect of sexuality. What they hear, what they see, what they experience, it all affects their sexuality. Experimentation is the norm, that we all know that teenagers or adolescents, they are very experimental. They want to know, they are curious about each and every aspect of life. So they do a lot of experimentation. Ultimate sexuality is guided by all the factors together, and I'm going to discuss each and every factor in details today. Please be on the alert and listen carefully. Now, what are the factors? First and foremost, I wanted to discuss the media influence. First, let me tell you why I made it the most important factor. This was revealed by the Time magazine and CNN that 74% of teenagers in the United States, they said that their source of information about sexuality, about sexual information, they were two: friends and peers, and the media. So the media can be in any form: TV, movies, social media, internet, chat rooms, porn sites. These are the main two things which they go to, because our parents are not discussing this with them. They are shying off from discussion of sex. They are shying off from discussion of sexuality. And so the young generation is going towards, talking about it with their friends and peers, and going to the media. They're getting half-baked information, they're getting wrong information, and they're sucking it in. So that is what is making problems for our society. And only 10% have named their parents as a sex educator. Or in some schools, there are some sex education classes, which is a good happening. So I hope it increases more. So now, how does the media influence? Now, this I wanted to prove to you that media is the most sole influencer for sexuality of the teenagers or adolescents. But how does it influence? As we see in the movies, heterosexuality was the norm in earlier movies, and it was taken as the main form of sexual orientation. But today, when we see movies, the heterosexuality as well as homosexuality and other forms are given coverage. I'm not saying that it is wrong, Media has done a lot of good job of creating awareness about the various sexual orientation. But the important thing is that the majority position of heterosexuality has to be retained, because human is reproduction is a very important matter. Thus, all the movies need not carry the label of various sexual orientation. They need to give it a minority status. That's the only thing. And our parents need to understand that when their adolescents are in a very impressionable age, how much and what kind of media should be shown to them. Monitoring is required, definitely, but not spying. Remember my video? I have done a video on monitoring with teenagers, but not spying. So remember that video. You can go back to my previous lessons and have a look at those videos. Factor number two, the prenatal environment. Of course, this is not a very important factor, but I am going to deal with all the factors today. Genetics may affect 1% of the people, but it is not proven. There are anatomical malformations, like in, for example, I just gave an example to make you understand, in Klinefelter syndrome, which contains XXY hormonal effects. Now, in a study of 300 men, researchers have found that when there was a moderate amount of stress to a pregnant lady, then 70% of 70% of homosexual men and 24% of bisexual men were reported to being born to this mother, to these mothers, and only 6% of heterosexual men were born to stressed out mothers. Why? Because when the mother gets stressed out, there is something called adrenal hormones, which includes the testosterone and androgens, and so it can affect the fetal growth, and maybe in later part it can affect the sexuality too. Then the factor number three is environment. By environment, I mean the home environment, the family, how the parenting is done, what is the education given to the child, what are the books teaching the child, and the circumstances. Now, in home front, what is the relationship between the husband, wife, what kind of romanticism is there? If there is any domestic violence, of course, there is a push towards the other sex, or some kind of psychological models have been built. Freud also, as you know, Sigmund Freud, he was a very famous neurologist who has dealt with a lot of psychological effects in humans. And so he has given some factors affecting the sexuality. Then family. In family, presence of the relatives who are already homosexual, or how they are accepted, all those things matter. The teenagers, they get affected after watching them. Parenting, for example, overpowering mother is there. Son is attached to the males more, that is the father side, son gets attached to the father more. Now this is Freud's theory. I want to make one thing very clear here. Now many parents came back to me, so you mean to say that if my son doesn't love me, he will become homosexual? I am not saying that. I am not saying that. Please be clear. I'm not saying that all mothers who are strict, their sons are bound to become homosexual. No, it is not like that. But some amount of minority of cases, there is no research on this, but these are all factors which have been found to affect, right? So please beware about this, that don't point out on one factor and say, oh, this may cause. This is not like that. As I've already told earlier, that all factors together can lead to the change or the decision about sexuality. Not any single factor cannot make you make a choice for any sexual orientation. So this has to be remembered. Education, what the books teach about the sexuality orientation, or about the homosexualism, or whether they treat it as a normal variation of sexual orientation, or whether they make it a disease, or whether they make it as a something good. So all this is bound to happen. This education may affect the thought process of the student. Then circumstances, as we have noticed in IITs where male population is more, or in defense forces where the male population is more, there have been incidences of increased homosexualism. So there are no researches on this, but we are just in the process of deriving factors which can lead to various sexual orientations. Factor number 4, the social, cultural, and religion. They also can affect. Now, how does social norms, our society as in India, we are so strict. We do not allow, even if there is a homosexual at home, he is not allowed. It is not even legal, but he is not allowed to express himself. So to a certain extent, that kind of an attitude, the non-acceptance can produce, they can lead to different sexual orientations. Then culture, what are the values, beliefs, and perceptions of the people? They can sometimes divert the sexual orientation. Then religion, what is the way of life taught by religion? As our Hindu religion is a very tolerant religion. If you go to our temples, if you see our sculptures in Khajuraho and other places, you will see that we are very tolerant to many sexual orientations. So it is the religion, how it treats sexuality, that is very important. Factor number 5, the philosophical, the moral, and the ethical values of an individual are again very, very important. Philosophical means if I am a person who is guided by what I want, which I believe in righteousness, and suppose I feel that I have this homosexual orientation and I feel it is right, then that may make me have this orientation more. I will bend more towards that, right? Same way, moral. Now, moral values are guided by various things. What are your childhood experiences? If there has been any sexual abuse on you, then your viewpoints about sex, about sexuality may change totally. There are children who are sexually abused, so they totally lose it out on that sexuality. And they just think that what they are seeing is normal. Then pornography, that really makes your sexual orientation in a very, it gives a very bad light on the sexual orientation. So again, that is to be on alert that our children, they get good education about sex. They do not get diverted towards wrong ideas through pornography. Then ethical. Then ethical, as I've already discussed, our religion, our culture, how it is accepted by the society. Till now in our society, the sexual orientation, the only sexual orientation which was accepted was heterosexualism, but we are a society which is changing its ethics. And so we are proceeding further. And of course, awareness is a good thing. And we are proceeding for a more open society, maybe a better society. So hoping for the best. So that ends with all the factors. And once again, I want to tell all the parents here who are present, whether you have a small child, whether you have a teenager, or whether you have an adult person, adult ward. So all the parents, they need to be aware that sexual orientation is not fixed thing at birth. Because ultimately, our children are also going to be parents, so they need to understand that. So sexual orientation is not a fixed thing from birth, but it develops during adolescence. Also, communicate, listen, and answer their questions. That is very important. And we must communicate to them the right knowledge. We must listen to their doubts. We must answer their questions without being shy, because sexuality is a very important part of not only an individual, not only society, not only community, but of the country and the world and our human race. So let us look at the bigger things. Let us look at the sustenance of human race, which is the purpose of human reproduction, and accept not only the majority of sexual orientation, but also the variants of sexual orientation. And we should always be positive about it. That's all for today. And parents, this is my, I would just like to say that Parenting Teens with Love by Dr. Sonia S. Kanetkar is my YouTube channel. And you can just, this is a Med Talks where I'm talking. So you can like this video, and you can also go and see my other chapters, other lessons, which I have already put on my channel also. Thank you so much, Med Talks, for giving me this opportunity. Thanks a lot. I hope I have made things clearer to the parents.